Book of Heaven, Volume 17, Part 2. July 16th, 1924. How the Creator goes in search of the creature in order to place on her lap the goods that He issued in creation. Wanting to dispose man again to receive the gift of His will, it is necessary that God return to breathe on him again. Continuing in my usual state, my adorable Jesus transported me outside of myself and told me, "My daughter, the Creator goes in search of the creature in order to place on her lap the goods that He issued in creation. This is why in all centuries He always disposes that there be souls who go in search of Him alone, so that He may place His goods in those who search for Him and want to receive His gifts. So the Creator moves from heaven, and the creature moves from the earth in order to meet, the one to give, the other to receive. I feel all the necessity to give, to prepare goods in order to give them, and to have no one to whom to give them, keeping them idle because of lack of correspondence on the part of those who do not care about receiving them, is always a great pain. But do you know in whom I can place the goods that came out of me in creation? In the one who makes my will her own, because it alone gives her the capacity, the appreciation, and the true dispositions in order to receive the goods of her Creator, and administers to her the requital, the gratitude, the thanksgiving, and the love that she is obliged to give for the gifts which from so much goodness she has received. Therefore come with me, and let us make our round together throughout the earth and the heavens, that I may place in you the love that I issued for love of creatures in all created things, and so that you may give me the requital for them, and together with me you may love everyone with my love. We shall give love to all. We shall be two in loving everyone. I shall no longer be alone." So we wandered everywhere, and Jesus placed in me His love that created things contained. And I, echoing His love, repeated with Him the "I love you" of all creatures. Then afterwards He added, "My daughter, in creating man, I infused the soul in him with my breath, wanting to infuse in him the inmost part of our interior, our will, that would also bring him all the particles of our divinity, that as a creature he could contain, to the extent of making of him our image. But man, ungrateful, wanted to break off from our will, and even though he still had his soul, the human will that took the place of the divine obscured him, infected him, and rendered all the divine particles idle, to the extent of disordering him completely and of maiming him. Now, since I want to dispose him again to receive this will of mine, it is necessary that I return to breathe on him again, so that my breath may put to flight darkness and infections from him, and may render active the particles of our divinity that we infused in him in creating him. Oh, how I wish to see him beautiful, restored, just as I created him. And my will alone can work this great prodigy. This is why I want to breathe on you, that you may receive this great good, that my will reign in you and give you back all the goods and the rights that it gave in the creation of man. And as he was saying this, drawing near me, he breathed on me. He looked at me. He clasped me. And then he disappeared from me. July 25th, 1924. The divine will keeps searching for souls who would lose all their rights, so that it may continue its act of placing all souls in their arms, as it did with Jesus on the cross. Sanctity in the divine will is a continuous act, and contains the image of the sanctity of the Creator. This morning my sweet Jesus made himself seen in my interior, in act of stretching his arms in the shape of the cross, and I remained stretched together with him. Then he said to me, "My daughter, the last act of my life was to lay myself on the cross, and to stay there until I died, with my arms opened, unable to move or to oppose what they wanted to do to me. I was the true portrait, the living image of the one who lives, not of the human will, but of the divine. Being unable to move or oppose myself, having lost every right over myself, the horrible tension of my arms. How many things they said. And while I was losing my rights, the others acquired my life. The first right was of the supreme will, that using its immensity and all-seeingness, gathered all souls, innocent and sinful, good and holy, and placed them in my outstretched arms, so that I might bring them to heaven. And I refused no one. So the divine will gave a place to everyone in my arms. Now, the supreme will is a continuous act, never interrupted, and what it does once, it never ceases doing. And even though my humanity is in heaven and is not subject to suffering, it keeps searching for souls who do not move in the human will, but in the divine, and who oppose nothing. Souls who would lose all their rights, so that, the right being wholly of my will, it may continue its act of placing all souls, sinners and saints, innocent and wicked, in the arms of the one who offers to lay herself in my will, in order to repeat and continue what my arms did, outstretched on the cross. This is why I have laid myself within you, so that the supreme will may continue its act of bringing everyone into my arms. Sanctity is not formed of one single act, but of many acts united together. One act alone forms neither sanctity nor perversity, because since the continuation of the acts is missing, the colors and the living shades of sanctity are missing. And because these are missing, one cannot attribute a just weight and value either to sanctity or to perversity. So, what makes sanctity shine and places the seal on it are the continuous good acts. No one can say he is rich because he possesses a coin, but those who possess extensive properties, villas, palaces, and so forth. So it is for sanctity, and if sanctity needs many good acts, sacrifices, heroism, but can also be subject to gaps, to intervals, the sanctity in my will is not subject to intermittent phases, but must associate itself with that continuous act of the eternal volition that never, never ceases, but is always acting, always operating, always triumphant, that always loves and never stops. So the sanctity in my will brings into the soul the mark of the operating of her Creator. That is His continuous love, the continuous preservation of all the things created by Him. He never changes and is immutable. One who is subject to changing belongs to the earth, not to heaven. Changing is of the human will, not of the divine. Interrupting good is of the creature, not of the Creator. Therefore all this would be unbefitting for the sanctity of living in my will, because it contains the insignia, the image, of the sanctity of her Creator. Therefore be attentive. Leave all rights to the supreme will, and I shall keep forming in you the sanctity of living in my will. July 29th, 1924. The acts done in the divine will form a prop on which Jesus and the soul can take rest. The divine will excludes every fear. This morning, after much struggling, my always lovable Jesus made himself seen in my interior, tired, as if he wanted to rest. And since there was some kind of prop within me, he extended his arms to cling to that prop, and placing his head upon it, he rested. And not only did he rest, but he invited me to rest with him. How enjoyable it was to be leaning on that prop together with Jesus, to take a little rest after so many bitternesses. Then afterwards he said to me, "My daughter, do you want to know what this prop is that relieves us so much and gives us rest? It is all your acts done in my will that formed this prop for me and for you, that is so strong as to be able to sustain the weight of heaven and earth that I contain within me, and to give me rest. My will alone contains this strength and this virtue so great. The acts done in my will bind heaven and earth, and enclose within themselves the divine power, such as to be able to sustain a god." On hearing this, I said to him, "My love, yet with all this prop you are talking about, I fear you may leave me. What shall I do without you? And you know how miserable and good at nothing I am. So I fear that as you leave me, your will too may depart from me. And he, my daughter, why do you fear? This fear is your human will, which would want to enter the field to take a few steps. My will excludes every fear, because it has nothing to fear. On the contrary, it is confident of itself and unshakable. Even more, you must know that as the soul decides to let herself be possessed by my will and to live in it, since my will is linked with all created things, and there is nothing over which it does not have its dominion, in the same way, the soul remains linked with all created things, and as she does her acts, her daughtership with my will, her dwelling, her possession, remain inscribed on all created things with indelible characters. Take a look at the whole universe. Your name, your daughtership with my will, is written with indelible characters in the heavens, in the stars, in the sun, in everything. So how can it ever be possible that this eternal and divine mother may leave her dear daughter, born of her, and raised with so much love? Therefore remove every fear, if you do not want to embitter me. And while he was saying this, I looked into the heavens, into the sun, and in all the rest, and I could see my name written, with the title of Daughter of His Will. May everything be for the glory of God, and to the confusion of my poor soul. August 9th, 1924. Praying, suffering, and operating in the divine will are the only embankment to divine justice. Images of the living in the divine will: Father Sea and Mother Earth, the sea and the fish, the earth and the plants. After much waiting for the presence of my adorable Jesus, I felt him in my interior, extending his arms and saying to me, "My daughter, extend your arms together with me, in my will, to repair for many who extend their works in the human will, that forms for them the net of all evils, to hurl them into the eternal abyss, and to prevent my justice from pouring itself upon them, in order to vent its just fury. In fact, when the creature extends herself in my will to operate and to suffer, my justice feels touched by the creature with the power of my will, and it ceases its just rigors. It is a divine vein that the creature makes flow between God and the human family, and because of which my justice cannot help having regard for poor humanity." And while saying this, he showed how creatures are preparing a great revolution among parties, against the government and against the church. What a horrible massacre could be seen! How many tragedies! Then my sweet Jesus resumed his speaking. "My daughter, did you see? Creatures do not want to stop it. Their greed for shedding blood is not yet quenched in them, and this provokes my justice to destroy entire cities by earthquakes, by water, and by fire, and to make their inhabitants disappear from the face of the earth. Therefore, my daughter, pray, suffer, operate in my will, because this alone can be an embankment, so that my justice may not burst out with its devastating thunderbolts in order to destroy the earth. Oh, if you knew how beautiful and delightful it is to see a soul operate in my will. An image of this can be given to you by Father Sea and Mother Earth, that are so bound and linked to each other that the water cannot be without the earth, and the earth would be sterile without the water. There is like a marriage between them, such that the sea can be called Father, and the earth Mother. Such is the union that the soul should have with my will. Now, what is there in the sea? An immensity of waters. Who inhabits these waters? Whom do they nourish? To whom do they give life? To many different fishes that nourish themselves, swim and dart inside the immense sea. See then, the sea is one, but many fishes live in it. However, the love and the jealousy of the sea toward them is so great that it keeps them hidden within itself. Its waters lay themselves above and below them, to the right and to the left. If the fish wants to swim and move, it slices through the waters, and darting, it amuses itself, and the water lets itself be cut through, but it presses itself around it, below and above it. It never leaves it. And there, where the fish passes, it immediately closes the way behind it, leaving no trace of where it passes or where it reaches, so that no one may follow it. If it wants to be nourished, the water offers itself to feed it. If it wants to sleep, it makes itself its bed. But it never leaves it. It always presses itself around it. But in spite of this, one can see that in the sea there are beings that are not the waters. One can see motions, darts, formed by these mute inhabitants, for which the sea is life, while they are the glory, the honor, and the richness of the sea. More than fish is the soul who operates and lives in my will. My will is immense. The creature is finite. However, she has her motions, her voicing, her little walking. And as my will sees her within itself, its love and jealousy are so great that more than see, it lays itself above and below her, to the right and to the left, and it makes itself life, food, word, work, step, suffering, bed, rest, and dwelling of this fortunate creature. It follows her everywhere, and it even amuses itself together with her. I could say that they are my glory, my honor, and the richness to whom my will gives birth. The operating of the soul in my will is like the swimming and the darting of the fish in the terrestrial sea, and the soul does it in the celestial sea of the supreme volition. These souls are the hidden inhabitants of the celestial waves, who live of the immense inheritance of the infinite sea of my will. And just as the fishes are hidden, disappeared inside the sea, mute, yet they form the glory of the sea and serve as food for man, so do these souls seem disappeared inside the divine sea, mute, yet they form the greatest glory of creation, and are the primary cause for my letting descend upon earth the delicious food of my will and of my grace. Another image of the operating of the soul in my will is the earth. The souls who live in my will are the plants, the flowers, the trees, the seeds. With how much love does the earth not open in order to receive the seed? Rather, it does not open, it splits in order to place itself upon it, to help the seed to become dust with itself, so as to be able to deliver more easily from its womb the plant which that seed contains. And as it begins to come out of its womb, it presses itself around it. It gives it the humors it contains, almost like food, to make it grow. A mother cannot be so affectionate as Mother Earth. In fact, a mother does not always hold her newborn on her lap, nor does she constantly give him milk, while the earth, more than mother, never detaches the plant from its breast. Rather, the more it grows at the top, the more the earth sinks underneath, and it rips open to make space for its roots, so as to let the plant grow more beautiful and strong. Its love and its jealousy are so great that it keeps it attached to its breast, to give it life and continuous nourishment. But the plants, the flowers, and so forth, are the most beautiful ornament of the earth, its happiness, its glory, and its richness. And they provide food for the human generations. More than Mother Earth is my will for the soul who lives and operates in my will. More than tender Mother, I hide her in my will. I help her to let the seed of her will die, that she may be reborn with mine, and I form my beloved plant. I nourish her with the celestial milk of my divinity. My jealousy is such that I keep her attached to my breast, and I remain pressed around her, that she may grow beautiful and strong, and all in my likeness. Therefore, my daughter, be attentive. Always operate in my will, if you want to make your beloved Jesus content. I would like you to cease everything, to take this point alone of living and operating constantly in my will. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 17, Part 2. Fiat.